So, Larry, a little birdie told me that you have a surprise announcement today. So, I'm excited to hear what's the announcement.
Hi, I'm Dr. Larry Crenshaw. Welcome to the couch. Today it's my privilege to introduce you to my friend, Phylis Dickerson, the CEO of the African American Mayors Association.
Thank you, Larry, for inviting me to the couch.
Well, thank you, Phyllis. I mean, I'm so glad that you reached out, and it's so glad to have a connection such as you.
So let's get started because I got a couple of questions about the couch, okay?
Okay, all right.
All right, so what type of person actually needs to have therapy and come to the couch?
You know, it's funny that you would ask that question as your first question because, I think that sometimes when people think about therapy, they think of, going to solve some problem, that they're going to be sitting in the seat of judgment. When in fact, like mental health wellness care is about self-care. It's about being aware of when something is not feeling right. You're sitting in a state of anxiety, you're sad, you're depressed. Those are times when you need to seek care or sit down on the couch. But more importantly than that, I think in this whole new wave of positive psychology, people are going to see coaches and they're working with them just to, work out different ideas that they have. So everybody can come sit on the couch.
Wow. So, but you do know there's a stigma, with coming to sit on the couch. So how, as a community, do we kind of get rid of that whole stigma?
Phyllis, I think it's, it's something that we have to be culturally sensitive of, right? We have to be sensitive of different cultural customs and cultural norms, yet at the same time, we have to allow people to get treatment and to acknowledge when they're not feeling well. So getting rid of the stigma is about trying to change the narrative of what mental health wellness is. In changing the narrative, we have to begin talking about our mental health wellness not as a weakness, but as something that empowers us. Empowers us to practice that self-awareness and that self-care and to ensure that we are enjoying our life.
So, I grew up Southern Baptist, so I got to bring the Lord into this conversation.
Uh-huh.
So, we're taught to take everything to the Lord in prayer, right?
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, how do we know when to take it to the Lord in prayer, but you also need a little counseling?
Yeah. And there is so much value in religion. Religion provides us with hope. It provides us with foundational knowledge and guidance on how we should live our lives. And so counseling is complementary to religion and religious beliefs. It really is a supplement. And so the two, I think, work hand in hand. We take things to the Lord, and we can talk to Him, and we can get an understanding that we can leave that there. But it's important to know that the Lord also gives us, resources, such as doctors and counselors and therapists and others that He has given the interest in helping people to make good life choices and decisions, and not to tell them what to do, but to help them to reach into their own thoughts and consider what's most important for them.
Now, we know that payment for counseling normally comes through our work insurance. Some people are scared that if they use it, that the people in the office are going to find out that they're going to counseling. How do we respond to that?
Well, I believe that it's important for people to know that there are protections. Like there are HIPAA guidelines, there are other guidelines that people in this industry are required to follow. And those guidelines require confidentiality. It requires practicing ethically. It requires, a whole set of regulated practices that must be adhered by all the different members of the ecosystem. So when you go to your healthcare insurer or your healthcare provider, they all have to remain in compliance and keep your information confidential. So if you utilize your benefits to go and seek mental health wellness care, then no one can use that against you to penalize you.
Okay, that's good to know, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the other things we saw, especially during COVID and some post-COVID, an uptick in the Black community in suicides.
Yeah.
So what do you think that was attributed to?
Well, there are many factors that attribute to the growth in suicide. There were, in 2017, I think from the ages of 6 to 11, the suicide rates among African American children more than doubled. And so when you think about statistics like that, it's alarming. And there are a number of factors, generational factors. There are systemic racism attributes to it, having a lack of resources or a lack of representation of mental health wellness providers in their communities. And the stigma of mental health care is also an attributing factor to that. And so it's important that we look at these statistics and we look at this data, and we try to do things like you said. We change the narrative of what mental health wellness care is about, and give people tools and resources that can help them self-assess themselves and understand the significance of that.
So I just kind of want to ask, what are some of the topics people discuss without divulging anything? What are some of the subject matters that people discuss when they come to counseling?
It's funny because, people think that there's one main topic. What should I talk about when I go to counseling or when I meet with my coach? And really, counseling, therapy, coaching, it's about you. It's about that unique individual and what they care about and what they're concerned about. And so, you can walk into your session and the biggest thing on your mind on that day may be a fight that you've had with your significant other, or it could be that you had a bad day at work and you want to better learn how to manage stress or anxiety. But stress, anxiety, the inability to achieve goals, depression. There are many different factors, but again, it's driven by the individual and not necessarily by the facilitator of the session.
As you know, culturally, Black families are taught to keep the business in the family. Don't discuss it outside the house. So how do you convince people to actually come to counseling to deal with the weight of whatever that issue is?
Well, this is something that you have to use sensitivity, and you have to respect cultural norms. Coming to counseling is not necessarily about betraying the family. It is not about not adhering to what the family necessarily wants. And it's not necessarily a place that you're going to go to air the dirty laundry. It really is about having a safe space to go and to release a burden, because it's exhausting to carry around stuff, right? Imagine you're going through something challenging and you can't talk about it because maybe you're going through the challenge with the people that you are entrusted to keeping it a secret. So it provides a safe space that's confidential and that is not going to try to influence your decision, but more importantly, allow you to put out whatever the factors are, and then helping you to sort of navigate the steps to achieving more positive results.
So, the listening audience always wants to know, what's the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist?
Okay. So the difference is that a psychiatrist is a medical doctor, and so they can prescribe medications for people who are dealing with severe depression or bipolar disorder. A psychologist is a therapist, and they diagnose and they initiate tools, and they provide their clients with resources. A counselor, a doctor of counseling, which is what I am, is very much like a psychologist, and they provide similar therapeutic services, and they work in cognitive behavioral therapy and movement therapy and all of these different therapeutic techniques to help people to have a more positive life experience.
So, since you're a Black man, I'm going to ask the Black man question. A lot of people think going to counseling is a sign of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
So, tell me, how do you deal with that stereotype, especially as a Black man?
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things that is very difficult. It's very sensitive, right? I won't say that it's difficult, but what you have to do is you have to respect individuals' beliefs, but you have to be able to help them to understand that getting yourself to a position of wellness is not about exposing a weakness, it's about empowerment. You're empowering yourself to determine what's wrong with you and assess what's wrong with you. And then if you can't find the answer yourself, then you're using therapy, counseling, coaching, you're using some resource to not sit stuck struggling with something where, you could be like a ticking time clock, that you have a short fuse and you're going to explode. So it's a place to take your power back.
Wow, I like that. I like that a lot. And so, how do you know when the person is done with counseling so it won't be just a lifetime session?
Yeah. So, counseling, coaching, any therapeutic practice is going to have a start point and an end point. It's going to have a goal. So when you come in to coaching with myself, we'd sit down and we'd say, hey, Phyllis, what are the things that you want to work on? And then we would define those goals and we'd put together milestones for you to reach in order to feel better. Because ultimately, it's about giving you the tools so that you are better able to navigate life and have the fulfillment and enjoyment of life. I always use scaling questions in some of my assessments with clients. And in those scaling questions, I'll ask on a happiness level, like on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being that you're severely unhappy and 10 meaning that, you are excited and you are at your utmost point. I ask, clients to weigh themselves, especially when they come into counseling and maybe they don't look like themselves. They may look like something's weighing heavy on their mind. And it's funny because the answer to that question can give you so much information. And so when they come in and they're at a 10 and they say, I feel like I have achieved the goal that I have. I did this today. I processed something appropriately. I think I'm good. Then it's time. That's when it's time. But giving them the invitation that if at any time you feel like you need a tune-up, like you take your car to the shop, right? You just feel like you need to talk to someone. Then that's when you go back. And realizing that the door is always open, you can always return.
Okay. So I heard you talk about different types of counseling. So what type of counseling do you offer? I know earlier we were laughing and you were talking about movement therapy, and I saw the exercise bikes and I was like, that's not my kind of therapy. But I'm sure it's the kind of therapy that other people would love to have. So what type of counseling do you offer in your office?
So what I do in my office is I act more as a coach, right? And so I work with individuals, I work with families, I work with couples, and I work with groups. And we work on, on goals. If the goal may be something emotional, it may be, they want to better be able to handle anxiety or depression, but it's really specific. I want my clients to sit down and say, you know what, I'm good in all these other areas of my life. It's just when I attempt to do this that I have a challenge. And so I typically work with clients on specific directional goals. And, it could be, a health and wellness goal. It could be, again, an emotional goal. Or it could be a relationship type goal.
So what is movement therapy?
Movement therapy, is things like dance, it's yoga, it's meditation, it's cycling. So I have a movement therapy space. And I have clients who, maybe they're working on a health and wellness goal, and they come in and we cycle and we talk. And sometimes we're talking about their wellness goal, and sometimes we're talking about whatever is on their mind at that point in time that's important to them. But the thing about it is that we're moving, and movement promotes these positive endorphins in our minds, and it actually makes us feel good. And so that's probably my favorite. Those are my favorite, client sessions is when we're moving.
Wow. And so when people are thinking about coming to counseling and preparing, should they just come in and pour everything out, and they're all over the place, or should they be kind of working on one specific thing? Maybe two things at one time, but not all over the place.
Phyllis, with my clients, I always give homework. And with coaches, counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, all of them, they'll all give their clients homework. And that homework is assessments. And it will ask very specific questions about what's going on with them, their development, their family life, their background. If it's not covered in the assessment that I send out, then yes, bring it all. Bring it all into therapy, because that way what you can do is we can clearly prioritize, right? We can identify themes. Sometimes things are connected. Things are connected. If I work on that, then, obviously I'm going to feel better. If I'm anxious, if I'm sad, let's explore what the source of that anxiety or that depression or that stuckness, where it comes from. And then, then we go from there. We find out what's most important to you, though.
So Larry, a little birdie told me that you have a surprise announcement today. So I'm excited to hear. What's the announcement?
Yeah, so Phyllis, I'm beyond excited to share the publication of my new book, Change. And so Change is a guide to achieving life goals. And what makes change special, it's rooted in science, right? So it's not like some abstract concept, but it is practices that I've done with clients and through my experience and research. And it pulls together a bunch of actionable items that I ask the readers to consider and explore in their change process. I spent so much time going back and trying to change it from the voice of a doctor of counseling to a voice that was just like any other person. If you were talking to your uncle or your dad or your brother or your cousin or whomever, I wanted to be in that voice. I wanted people to really explore what is important to them. What are their beliefs and what in their network of support makes them strong? What attributes to their determination? And what things they're willing to work on in order to make change into a reality. So it was a labor of love for me. I thought as my first book, it was something that I think is at the root of all change that you would do in anything in life. And so, what's interesting is the statistics of people who, set goals for themselves and are unable to reach, right? So you would think that everybody, just wakes up every morning and they say, I'm going to be more healthy. And just because you say it, that it's going to come into life. But, the truth is that out of 100% of people in the U.S. population, numbers from the CDC indicated that 92% of people who take on a change goal actually do not achieve them. I'm sorry. So only 8% of people can achieve, are actually achieving their goals. That's not saying that people aren't successful in their careers or in their work, but there's something else oftentimes that's associated that they're not able to achieve those goals. And so change is a tool. It's a resource. It's a different way of thinking. And, I'm excited to offer it to an audience of readers. I think there's so many other versions of good, valuable ways to make goals and meet goals. But I think I offer a very interesting group of ingredients of what it takes to be successful in change.
Well, thank you for inviting me to the couch. I've enjoyed our time together today.
Well, thank you, Phyllis. I really appreciate you coming over.
Of course. Until next time.
All right, until next time.